Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Wait a minute, not just another episode. This is a Tuesday morning left guard free agency preview special with former Minnesota Viking Jeremiah Sirles. Jeremiah, already this morning, we have a trade for an offensive lineman to the Chicago Bears. They also did one yesterday. They're loading up. The Vikings are sitting around with no draft picks to trade anybody, so it's going to have to be the free agent and draft route. There's Sam Darnold reports that maybe he could come back, even though most of society had already moved on. We got a lot going on, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, first thing I noticed is Ben Johnson's taking a play out of old Dan Campbell's playbook. We win up front, right? F them. We don't need them draft picks. Let's just bring in dudes. I mean, Jonah Jackson is 28 in the prime of his strength. He got dinged last year. I mean, he signed a decent deal to go there from the Lions, familiarity, right? And then you get a Joe Thuney, a Hall of Fame wearing, rings this all over his hands, multiple position playing for a fourth. My goodness. I mean, Kansas City obviously is offloading a bunch of cap because they got some issues, but I did not see, that was not in my bingo card of a fourth round pick in trade for Joe Thuney. But hats off to Ryan Poles and what they're doing there at the Bears of, hey, we got a young quarterback who got sacked the most in the league last year. Priority number one, shore up the offensive line.
I have to imagine when Ben Johnson did his interview there, that was the very start of it, because that has been really central so much to the Detroit Lions' success. And this is what happens when you tank and then lose a lot, is that you have a ton of draft picks and you can throw them over here, and you have a ton of cap space and you can throw them over there. The Vikings have a ton of cap space, but they do not have the draft picks to go make a trade like this. I also think that the Vikings are thinking maybe a little more on the long-term side at the offensive line positions, and we could get into the draft. I felt like it was an extremely good combine for teams that need a guard. I went into the combine being like, I don't know, there's this one guy, but listening to Daniel Jeremiah talk about it, there's a lot of these guys who are tackles that could play guard, and the potential is there for the Vikings, but do they spend number 24? We'll get into that. But from the free agent offensive line perspective, this now comes into, no matter who is playing quarterback, priority number 2. Figure out your quarterback first, then you have to figure out your interior offensive line. So clearly the Vikings can't really play in the trade sandbox if there's anyone else out there. How about the free agent class? When you look at it, and I made my list of top 60, that was when I ran out of people that I would potentially want on
your
the
wish
team.
list, your list for Santa Claus.
Yes, I made a top 10 and I wrote a lot about the top 10, and I had 2 guards in it. In fact, can you guess the 2 free agent guards that I had in the top 10 Purple Insider wish list for the Vikings?
I'm sure Trey Smith had to be number 1.
He was already franchise tagged, so he was
already tagged. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it the interior guy from Atlanta, the center?
Drew Dahlman. I did not include centers in this because I just don't get the sense that they're going to make a move with Garrett Bradbury. It seems like he's going to be their guy, which I know is the bane of some people's existence. But let's just start with the other positions for guys who clearly can't play at all at the guard spots. So one of the guys sounds delicious, and another one of the guys has been around for a while, and Vikings fans really wanted him in the draft in 2018.
Ooh, in 2018. Is it Jenkins from the Bears?
It's a good guess. Tevin Jenkins is a good guess. I'll just tell you.
Just tell me, please.
Will Fries, who sounds delicious. And the other one is Will Hernandez, who Vikings fans wanted in 2018. You do not want Will Hernandez.
He can't stay healthy, right? Like that. And so much is funny. I sat in so many meetings at the combine, right? I met with 27 of the 32 teams officially. I hit all 32 with the unofficial late night visits. But that being said,
no, you didn't. That's a joke. Clearly.
What do you mean? What do you mean? The late night like hangouts and you run into each other and things get done?
I don't know. I do not know what you're talking about. So you should just move on.
All right, let's move on. Anyways, every single person I met with, they all said, so much is availability. right? And when they're talking about buying guys in free agency and you're looking at guys of longevity, of, hey, how can we get them on a roster? They're like, we're tired of paying people a bunch of money to come in and play 8 games a year, 9 games a year, right? If we're paying you, we want you available. And so they're starting to look a lot more at that type of stuff. Thing with Will Hernandez, I think he's a road grader and he's a monster of a human being. He's struggled to play full seasons consecutively, right? He might have one full season here and there, but consecutively, as he's getting a little bit older now, he is really starting to kind of be on that age where it's on the decline, where he's going to plan on missing probably 4, 5, 6 games a year. And that's what you have to get with him.
Okay, I've got the numbers on that, the snap counts. In 2021, he was over 1,000 snaps, then 843 in 2022, 1,100 in 2023, and last year, ACL tear. That's pretty tough. So, a little bit, 2 of the last 4 years over 1,000. I definitely understand where you're coming from. My thought on that was he is a well above average pass protector and has the beef to actually move people and the strength, and ACL tear is kind of random. So if he can come back and play like he did in 2023, but you know what I notice about this free agent class is that that's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
That's at every position. You're saying, well, the guy missed a lot of last year. He was injured. He was banged up. And this also goes for Will Fries as well. He had, I think, a broken leg last year, and he was looking like an ascending player. But I also think he's going to get a ton of interest because there just aren't a lot of guys.
Yeah, I mean, the market is very small, right? The question for me is it's a very talented interior line class. Like, how many people are willing to say, hey, we're going to pass on the big agent, the big money free agent, and gamble on a late day 2, top of day 3 type of pick? Because I do think there's going to be some guards that have second round grades that fall to the top of day 3 just based off of the middle part of this class and the needs there. So, I mean, it's one of those things, risk reward. If the price is right, absolutely. But I mean, he could be a guy that's commanding 8 to 12 in that realm, right? 8 to 12 a year, maybe even more, depending, because it is the scarcity of the market. So if that's what you're looking for, great. But he's also coming from a system that's more of a run first system. And if there was a weakness in his game, it is that he's not very big. He's not a huge human being. He's really a good athlete, good technician, right? But when you're looking for size to shore up the interior there, that's really not his strong suit.
Right. And he is a guy that was drafted late and developed into a good player, which I think is a reliable path, but it's also not a freak type of player, which you usually get in the draft. So the other guys that I had on my Purple Insider free agent watch list, which I feel like I need like a big Purple Insider free agent watch list. Kevin Zeitler is 127,000 years old, but he
Solid.
still is
So
really
solid.
good. Yeah, he's still really good. I think that he, for a 1-year option, is pretty good. And Tevin Jenkins could be a multi-year, but Jenkins is another guy who has never played 1,000 snaps. And these are the type of risks you have to take. It's so clear that the Vikings want to shore up this line and they want to invest in this line. But the question that they have to ask themselves is it really prudent to spend even on a Will Fries? I mean, I think that the numbers will be higher for him because there's so few of these guys. I think he'll get like 15 plus. And is that really what you want to do for someone who is more along the lines of an average player, but you're paying for, as you said, the scarcity? That's where someone like Brandon Sheriff or Kevin Zeitler might be a better option to fill this spot for now and try to develop some guys through your pipeline. I think Walter Rouse will be a guard at some point. They drafted Michael Juergens. You could draft other guys this year. I think it's better to be less risky at this spot for 2025.
I would agree with you because Will Fries is going to want a 4-year deal, right? I mean, when you're coming up on your first free agency, you're trying to, as a player and an agent, ring the cash register. And if you're not completely 100% sold on the guy, it's a risky thing to lock a guy in for a 4-year deal. I know there's always outs, but dead money gets pushed across that time. You'll be paying for that if you're like not 100% sold. Versus a guy like Sheriff or Zeitler, right? You could really do a 1-year or even a 2-year deal, right? And have more of the front end loaded, because sometimes we get up in that higher age range, you want that 2-year deal because there's some injury protection guarantees going in if something were to happen to you at the later part of your season that would then cause you to miss part of the following season. Right, there's some injury protection there. So I mean, I could see Brandon Sheriff, hey, I'm tired of Jacksonville. Minnesota was really good last year, coming in on that piece, or even Zeitler too. I mean, seeing what they played against with Minnesota's defense, familiarity with that. I can see both those guys wanting to come and chase a ring, right? Wanting to come say, hey, that defense is really good. There's Justin Jefferson. There's a lot of pieces there. Wanting to come up there and say, I'm willing to take a 1 year or 2 year to fill a stopgap for you as you go here. That then allows them some wiggle room to draft a guy they maybe really like on day 3, develop behind guys that have played a ton of football, right? And then hope that they turn into that starter a couple of years down the road, or compete for a starter, or at minimum, a really good backup that you're going to need at times during the year.
Guys, if you watch the show all the time, you know that I'm a hat guy, but if you're wearing hats to cover up for your hair loss, then I've got something that can help you. It's called Hims. If you've lost your hair, that doesn't mean you can't find it again. Try Hims Hair Loss Solutions, and you'll be joining hundreds of thousands of subscribers who have found their hair again. Hims makes treating hair loss simple with clinically proven ingredients that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. Choose from personalized chewable, oral, spray, or serum treatments to find what works best for you. The process is simple and 100% online, so there are no uncomfortable doctor visits. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/purple insider. That's HIMS.com/purple insider for your personalized hair loss treatment options. Him.com/purple insider. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See the website for full details and important safety information. So the idea that I liked was to go after Mekhi Becton, because last year he started off, when he first transitioned into a guard, pretty rough. But then when you look at from week 6 on all the way through the Super Bowl, he was a serious impact player for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I know it helps to have good players around him, but you look at that guy's physical traits, where he came from in the draft, he could be a monster guard and just improve and improve and improve. And especially in the run game, he was an absolute beast. But then the Vikings hired an assistant offensive line coach that has some history with Mekhi Becton that doesn't sound like it was very positive. So I think that this option might end up being off the table. I don't know if you have a take on that, if that's something that a player would consider or not consider so much when we're talking about, free agent decision. I would think that a player, especially the relationship between O-linemen and their coaches, is one of the most vital in the sport. I would think that takes Becton off the table.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. If it's like an only option type of thing, you can, okay, I want to be in the league, so be it. But when you're looked at as a high-end free agent and you have choices, there's times where you're like, I don't want to deal with that I dealt with that, or I don't want to go back to that place where I wasn't in a good place as a player there, right? Mentally, physically, whatever it might be. And, if I'm Mekhi Becton, I'm not willing, regardless of what the money says, to put myself in a position like that again where I wasn't happy and I didn't play my best, right? Because he's going to be a guy that, regardless of what he gets, it's going to be kind of a prove it deal with the structure of it, because he was only kind of that 1 year starter piece. So he needs to put himself in a situation that surrounds him with the best opportunity to be the best version of himself. With the addition of the assistant line coach there in Minnesota, the history there, I don't think that that's something Becton's going to want to subject himself to, honestly.
I have trouble formulating too much of hot takes on assistant offensive line coaches, but when I read some of the stuff that was out there, especially from Taylor Lewan, who is a very highly respected lineman, I do raise an eyebrow a little bit at this decision to bring him in, because I think that Chris Cooper's done a really good job.
Fantastic.
You can only do what you can with the talent. When you lose Christian Darrisaw, and I see other teams' reporters saying, Cam Robinson, they might give him $18-20 million. I'm like, oh boy, okay. Respect for what he had to do last year, but that's not going to go too good. You lose Christian Darrisaw to Cam Robinson, to me, is going from the 5th best offensive lineman in the game to like the 58th. And I don't know what Chris Cooper's supposed to do there. At right guard, Ed Ingram had 3 years to prove it. He didn't. At left guard, he was tasked with moving a sixth round tackle who lacked an athleticism to guard, and he managed over the season. And then Brian O'Neill's playing hurt at the end of the year, trying to play against the Los Angeles Rams line. I think Cooper has done better than they did before with this offensive line group. I didn't feel like they needed somebody else with different ideas to come in. I did feel like the run game coordinator thing mattered, but this person also had Derrick Henry when he was in Tennessee, and I could run game coordinate for Derrick Henry. So, again, I don't want to make too much of it, but I also think if you can't chase someone like Mekhi Becton, or there's a reputation out there that other people are saying, I don't know if I want to go to Minnesota because of what I've heard about this person, if that hurts you, that's not a good decision to bring them into your organization.
Yeah, and I never had first-hand experience with him as a coach, but I have had friends and buddies that have played with him, and they weren't his favorite, right? I'm not gonna trash a guy because I never played for him, right? I'd have a lot better opinion if I did, but I will say I have plenty of friends in the league that they were not his favorite coach when they're in the league for one reason or another. Another big reason being he's not great with rookies, based off of just the way that rookies are coming into the league a little bit softer now, I would say, not as battle hardened with the transfer portal, with the way college football is going. If you get a rookie in there and it's a jump down your throat, MFU type of thing, sometimes I've seen rookies really melt with that stuff. So it's just something to think about of when you have that type of personality in your room, who's the voice? Is it Cooper? But I'll tell you, 90% of the time, the assistant line coach takes the young bucks, right? Cooper's got his own deal to worry about with game planning, development of his guys, putting the best five, undrafted free agents, late round picks, rookies, usually always go with the assistant line coach, and that's tasked with development. Really follow. It'll be interesting to follow and watch that and see how that goes. But again, I don't want to speak ill will too much of the guy. I just know that I haven't heard a ton of stellar reviews.
So the only thing I could say there is that, Brian Flores had some
Yeah.
issues previously with players who said things about him. The Vikings culture is different. The head man sets the tone, not the assistant offensive line coach. So things are done a certain way in Minnesota that may have not been done the same way in other places that he coached. But it is a factor if you can't chase one of the best guards because of someone that you brought in. And that's kind of how we got there. Anyway, the other names that I got on this list are, I don't think anybody that's going to make you squeal with joy. Patrick Macari is an interesting name for the
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore Ravens. He played every position. He was a Jeremiah Sirles, if you
Yeah.
will, but unlike you, he got better. And and he has actually established himself as a pretty good player, and is kind of interesting to me. He's more like a Joe Berger than a Jeremiah Sirles. And Aaron Banks is a gigantic guy who's 27. He could be a difference maker in the run game. Matt Pryor played for the Bears last year. He definitely had a jersey and a job. And then after that, Lucas Patrick, another guy's been around. Laken Tomlinson. I just would like to see Laken Tomlinson up close, but he's not a great player. My point is that the options are, you're hoping to get improved, but I don't think there's anybody, unless they would have been able to get Smith or Becton, who is really going to change your life here.
Yeah. I mean, no one on that list screams game changer, right? And it's a weird thing to talk about a game changer at the offensive guard position, but there are a few of them, and they're very well paid, and teams don't like letting them go. I mean, Landon Dickerson was a game changer for the Philadelphia Eagles last year. I mean, even Robert Hunt, who went to Carolina, helped them big time down the stretch. And they put Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt, paid those guards big money. You saw the improvement of Bryce Young this year as the year went on because he had better protection in the interior of his offensive line. All those guys, I think, are solid players. I think they're middle to back half of players at that position in the league, right? I think all the other guys that you talked about, Becton and Smith, and those guys are all upper 1/3 of players in the league. But that list, man, you get below guys like Aaron Banks and stuff. You're talking about average to below average type of players, starter level players in this league.
That's why I'm thinking the best plan is probably to entice a proven veteran like Zeitler or if they can't, I still like the Hernandez idea. I totally understand where you're coming from, but a proven veteran with a huge number of snaps that has shown what he can be, and then go to the draft with this. And in the first round, I noticed that most of the big name mockers, like Dane Brugler, for example, Trevor Sikkema for PFF, they've all got the Vikings taking guards. Gray Zabel is a name that keeps being connected to the Vikings. Do you like Gray Zabel?
I took second on Gray, man. I recruited him for 2 years. I love that kid. I love that kid. He's going to be a late first, day one starter. No doubt. I think he'd be a great fit for the Vikings.
Okay, tell me why.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, you look at the pedigree of the guys from the NDSU that come out, right? Going all the way back, Dylan Radins, 2020, second round pick, started a lot of games for Tennessee. 2021, my guy Cordell Volson, fourth round pick, day one starter for the Bengals. Cody Mock, day one starter for the Bucks, right? Jalen Sundell last year was my guy. He got hurt, ends up making active roster for Seattle, starting games for them at center towards the end of the year. Gray's the next one in that line. There's a pedigree there of guys that come out of NDSU ready to play. And watching the way that he played at the Senior Bowl, I got a chance to catch up with him at the combine, his preparation. He's getting bigger and bigger every time I see him. Still a little bit on the young side too, and he could play literally anywhere in the interior, right? His arms are going to lack him to play on the outside. It's a little stubby, right? But that all said, the athletic profile, the toughness profile, all that, he's a day one starting guard in the NFL.
It was funny. The other night on the show, I said, without even realizing how football this is, I was like, he weighed in really well at the but he did. He did. He was over 310,
Yep.
Which to me, that would be when a guy doesn't go to an Alabama or a Georgia, you say, all right, well, is he really going to be the size profile? But if you're up over that, and then he put up the numbers and the drills, I know this is ridiculous, but when it's that guy, you're looking much closer and going, okay, his movement. I also felt like Donovan Jackson was another guy that had great movement skill. He's played tackle, he's played guard. The questionable one now is Tyler Booker because of just the way that his workout went. And I try not to go crazy on this because the Orlando Brown thing, where Brown dropped to the third round, he turned out to be a really good starting tackle for his whole career after running like a 7.4 40 or something. But Booker didn't really show the athletic prowess that I expected.
He's never, if you go back to the tape, he's never really shown it. He is who he is. He is a downhill, play in a phone booth, mauler guy off the line, incredible inline power, right? He puts his hands on you on inside like single blocks. He's displacing. I mean, he fits more of a gap scheme type of player. That's all being said, as I was having this conversation with you in my brain, I'm going, wait a second. What are we as a system of a zone? Are we a zone? Are we a gap? Are we a pin pull? I don't know what we're going to be. And I think who we take interiorly is going to be a little bit telling of what kind of system we want to go to for our run, right? We draft Tyler Booker and we're going, okay, this is gap scheme all the way. Right? We're coming downhill. We're going a little bit similar with Donovan Jackson, right? You draft a guy like Gray Zabel, this dude can run, right? Well, okay, let's get out. Let's get some outside zone. Let's get Brian O'Neill and him on the same side and really stretch that defense and stretch and sink, right? So I do think watching this, who they pick up in free agency and who they pick up in the draft will be telling of the type of zone or downhill scheme that we will want to run. But Booker is going to fit great with, I mean, I would almost venture to say like, hey, Tyler Booker, you're a Raven, right? I mean, that type of thing, because that's the type of system he's going to fit into with the Chargers, the Ravens, Tennessee, maybe New England now with Vrabel back up there. Like he's a true downhill north-south type of offensive lineman, not like some of the really athletic guys you got to see that can really run laterally and get going on that plane.
We got one guy off the list as we speak. Alex Kappa signing with the Las Vegas Raiders was not really on my list the way that he's played in recent years, but the Raiders jumping the line a little bit and getting him. He was a free agent that you could sign now because he was cut by his team, by the way, if anyone's wondering. But when it comes to Booker and how they're going to play, I also think that depends on who the running back is, because Aaron Jones could come back. If Aaron Jones comes back, I don't think you're designing your future run game around Aaron Jones, but he is a zone guy. He's an outside zone. Last year, they did a lot of pitch stuff to him on the outsides, and that worked pretty well. That would be more of if it's a Gray Zabel type of thing. But if you draft like a Caleb Johnson from Iowa,
Yeah.
that guy is going to be much more north and south as running. I really like him still. He didn't
Oh,
have the best combine, but his movement, it's so funny how this works. It's like, oh man, it's 40. But then he's catching balls and stuff and he's running. You're like, oh, okay, that guy can really
his
move.
his tackle breaking ability is unbelievable too. I mean, guys just bounce off of him.
Which, if we're trying to connect some dots a little bit here, like a bigger runner, the guy who they just hired to coordinate run comes from Tennessee. Like, is that the
Mhm.
kind of thing they're looking for? And that would connect with a Tyler Booker. So I'm not that concerned about that. If anything, maybe it drops his stock a little bit so they could trade down and still draft a guy like that. But this kind of speaks to the bigger overall picture. Like, we've started with the offensive line here, but there's a lot of trickle down to other positions. It's okay, if you draft a guard at the spot of the 24th overall pick, or you trade into the second, which I think they can do, and still draft a guard. Where do you get your defensive tackle? Then you go to free agency and you go, all right, with Osa Odigizua off the list, Milton Williams is going to get 21, 25, somewhere in there range. That's a lot for me to give a guy who plays like 500 snaps. But then you go through the rest of the DTs, it's like, they got, they're okay. Like, I am intrigued by on Wazirki, and I'm intrigued by, I like BJ Hill as a
Mhm.
longtime player, but these aren't like total, like we said, game changers. So as a bigger picture free agency approach, like what would your priorities be?
Mm. You know, I don't know if you've done much studying on it, but this is a historic D tackle draft class. I think there was 75.
Wait, did you just say you don't know if I've looked at? I mean,
I don't.
I was
I
draft
mean,
simming. Listen to me. I was draft simming CJ West in the late third the other day. Okay,
fair, fair. I I I have a lot of confidence that you're going to be able to find a contributor at D tackle anytime on day 3 this year. Anytime on day 3. I mean, it is so deep. I mean, watching the guys at the Senior Bowl, watching the guys at the Shrine Bowl, like just looking at the tape of guys that didn't do any of those things, that didn't even I mean, you're going to have guys all over the place from edge and interior in the draft that you can get, and those dudes historically are more ready to play because it's not like an old lineman that you're asking to start every single play and go out there and do everything. I mean, D tackles and stuff can have packages, they can have roles, they can be a 25 snap a game, and they play really well for those 25 snaps. It's a meaningful contributor, right? So I'm not overbuying D tackles this year in free agency. No stretch of the imagination am I panicking and overbuying a guy that isn't great. And there's no one on that list that is screaming. I mean, there is no Leonard Williams on the market this year. There is no Quentin Johnson. Like, there's just not guys that are willing to lock into a 4 or 5 year deal on that free agency scale. Much rather we get a draft on that piece. I do think corner is a position that we need to take a look at for some depth in free agency. I'm not saying like tier 1 free agency, but as the week goes on later and later, find some guys that are veterans that have played in the league to come in and compete and push and have depth at that position. Because as we saw this year, one or two guys starts going down, you start hitting the panic button in that position big time. And as you look in our division, really good receivers all over the board. I would say corner is a spot in that like late tier 2 to top of tier 3 free agency that you'd want to take a peek at.
so let me get your opinion on which current Vikings free agents are coming back. Let's start with Trent Sherfield. No, I'm just kidding. But actually, no, truly though, like Trent Sherfield should come back. He was
Yeah.
a great special teams
Yeah.
option for them. He should come back. But that conversation begins with Byron Murphy around the combine. When talking to people, I got the sense that there's a ton of interest in Byron Murphy.
Mhm.
If he's coming back, it's probably for the vibes and the locker room and your friends and all those things. It's probably not for the money because it just feels like they would have to go above and beyond. But the big names are really Byron Murphy Jr., Cam Bynum, Aaron Jones for who they could potentially bring back. How do you feel about each one of them?
I'd love for Cam Bynum to be back. I think that he's a key piece in that Brian Flores defense. He understands the system. You move him around, you can let him blitz. Sometimes he was a decent blitzer off the edge, but he's going to command a lot of money. I think because, like tackles, there's never enough corners, like true starting corners that you feel comfortable about, or safeties in that realm. Like, there's just never enough of those guys. So I agree with you. I'd love to have him back. I don't think we can afford him. I mean, because we'd have to overbuy him. Like, I think that's the piece. Whenever you come back to your own home team, you kind of have to overbuy because you're looking around the league. Guys are having a lot that have more cap space than you, can throw more money at him. So you almost have to overbuy. But he might be a guy that I'd be willing to say, it's all right, put the higher price tag on him, lock him in for a multi-year deal, bring him back. Aaron Jones, I kind of feel like let's let him walk. In a weird situation like the DBs class, also a very good running back class. You can get a lot of value on day 3 running backs. Obviously, it's not a guy you want to hang your hat on to be an all big time starter, but I don't. Again, he's getting up there in age. He did great things for us. He missed some games last year. I just feel like that's a position we want to get younger at, and we want to bring some more pieces in. So I think you let Aaron Jones walk.
The hard part about Aaron Jones is, as far as his actual performance, 4.5 yards a carry was pretty good. He had 51 catches. Like, he was a
Mhm.
legitimate impact player in the receiving game, which, if JJ McCarthy is starting, oh, well, I'll get your opinion on that. Uh, but how about this? We've gone 29 minutes without really getting into that, which is refreshing for me because I've spent a lot of time on it
You know
recently.
where our eyes lie.
Yeah.
We did 20 of it on the O line.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Yeah, that's why it's Tuesday morning left guard, my
Mm.
friends. So, as far as that safety position, or I'm sorry, Aaron Jones goes, and
Aaron
we'll get
Jones.
to, yeah, Aaron
Aaron Jones.
Jones. Najee Harris, if he wants to leave Pittsburgh, which I was surprised to see that Pittsburgh got some low grades from their players, and I wonder about the happiness there in Pittsburgh.
That was weird.
The NFLPA was surprised
That
by
was weird.
that. Harris, I think his numbers, if you're a fantasy person, you're like, whatever, he's just kind of okay. But what we really see from these running backs is that the situation often dictates their performance if they reach a certain level of quality, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So the Pittsburgh Steelers have not had a passing game since
Ben.
2018. Yeah, but
Since Ben.
not just Ben, but since Ben was good. So like
Fair.
2018, right? Not when he was in my kind of shape at the end of his career and throwing it as fast as I could throw it too. So I think that Harris has been a victim of this. Like, it's been run first, every first down, then play action. And like, the safeties play in the parking lot against the Vikings. Like, I think this is different for Najee Harris. And Rico Dowdle was over 1,000 yards last year. I don't think he's great, but he's got like no mileage on the tires at
That's true.
all. So if you were talking about a pairing of a Rico Dowdle and a Quinshon Judkins or something, now I'm going, all right, this is pretty explosive. Judkins suddenly became my favorite guy along with Caleb Johnson after the combine, because I was just like 221 pounds and he ran that fast. So yeah, that's what the combine does to you, but he was also good at football. So that would be my plan, is to look for a draft pick running back and pair them with someone. If it's Aaron Jones, it's okay. But the upside to that, we know, I think, is limited. The safety position, Cam Bynum's reputation is as sterling around the league and in the Vikings locker room as it's going to get. When you look at the free agent list, though, there's so many guys. Javon Holland is a guy Flores drafted who's an absolute beast and has been a top 3 by PFF safety twice in his career. Justin Reed is not going to come back to Kansas City. He's a good player. Like, there's so many safeties that I just don't think those guys are going to get incredible dollars. If someone else is going to pay Bynum, you might have to just let them.
Yeah, I agree. You let Bynum walk. You let him test the market. If the market's not where he wants it to be, you might be able to get him back, right? I mean, it's one of those things too where I think he might get looked at around the league. And again, this is me projecting. I don't know if teams around the league look at him and think immediate plug and play in my system starter. I think he's good enough to do it, but the question all becomes: are we paying him to be an every down safety? Maybe. I mean, I think that there's guys that are more talented than him out there, and it's a good fit for him here. And sometimes those type of guys you can have a conversation with and go, "Hey, do you want to go somewhere where you're competing for the strong safety, free safety number 2, or do you know your role here and you're going to come be the guy?" Right? Those are the conversations you have to have, but it only takes one team to look at you and go, "No, you're the guy and we'll pay you this much money." Right? And that's the hard part about free agency when you're looking at it from the team's perspective. But my heart wouldn't break if he walked. I think that we'd have to make sure that we did not swing and a miss on a good free agent safety, though, which is always the risk you take.
The one thing I wonder about, and I guess I shouldn't be too concerned because of what happened last year, is they have this ecosystem that's worked so well with certain types of players that seem to connect really well with Brian Flores. Now, if it's Javon Holland, he's going to know Flores
Mhm.
and know whether he wants to play for him again or not. Some guy, it's funny how defensive guys, Andrew Van Ginkel's like, yeah, I love Flores, came here for Flores. And then maybe a certain quarterback is like, he hurt me. So I don't know. Right. Maybe I think defensive guys seem to be fine with, they're a little different than quarterbacks, but
Slightly.
I mean, there's a fit, like Byron Murphy Jr. Do you pay for fit?
Yeah.
Cam Bynum, do you pay for knowing that it's going to work rather than, hey, they brought in Marcus Davenport and that just did not work?
Mm.
And it was injury related, but it was also Davenport related. And so you just don't really ever know when you bring in somebody else who's been in a different environment, what it's going to be like. With Grenard, with Van Ginkel, with Cashman, I think they had a really good sense for what kind of people they were and that their mentalities were going to fit. So you'd want to do that, but you're never sure. You are sure about Bynum. You are sure about Murphy. And maybe there's an argument just for that.
One more piece on that. I do think that someone that's not going to be a sexy signing, it's not going to break a headline, but the Vikings need to find a really good LB3, right? Because we saw last year when those guys, when Pace was off the field, when Cashman was off the field, when they both were off the field, it was not good. Like it was kind of chaos. I mean, everything going around. I think with the scheme that Brian Flores plays, they need to have a good LB3 that can come in and spot start, can come in on bigger packages, right? I think that was an area that I pegged as I was watching them going, this is a need, and you can get a good LB3 that's going to be a four-core special teamer guy for a year, right? For 3.75, kind of like a Jalen Reeves-Maben guy from Detroit, who obviously just got released, right? But a special teams ace can come in and play really solid snaps. I do think that's something that's going to be on the Vikings' radar this year going in, because that's not something you want for a rookie in this system. You want a veteran in that spot for this system.
I totally agree. Kamu Grugier-Hill is a guy who's been around. He's played a lot of football, but he's not going to be able to play over. There's in front offices, they have colors for this stuff. Maybe you know these. It's
Yeah.
like blue player, red player, magenta, ocean blue. Like there's different colors, and one of the colors is if we got to play this guy for 4 weeks, we'll be okay. If
Mm-hmm.
we have to play him for any longer than a couple of games, we're going to be really in trouble. And that was kind of the case with trying to play someone like Grugier-Hill. It's just a position that's hard to find that
Yeah.
guy. I mean, they had Eric Wilson. Remember when he
Yeah.
stepped in, he was nice for that role.
Yeah.
And Grugier-Hill really, outside of like one or two splash plays, did not do a very good job there. So, and the thing that's weird to me is, and I've never gotten an explanation. I guess it's just been so irrelevant that I haven't asked. But Brian Asamoah was drafted in the third round, came in, splashed a little. He's actually been a legit special teamer. I do watch the special teams because I look for guys I might want to write about, or like a Jay Ward last year was kind of good at special teams. I'm like, okay, he might be somebody interesting. Asamoah's been fine as a special teamer, if not good, and just cannot break through the Brian Flores wall of shame. And he's over there with Lewis Cine and Tua and a number of other players that just are not allowed to look at the field. Don't even look at it. When there's
Yeah.
defense going on, you look in the stands. I just don't really understand what happened there. I guess it was just not his guy, and maybe they don't jive very well because Asamoah does have talent.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great point. I kind of even forgot he was on the team, if I'm being completely honest, because unlike you, I do not watch special teams. It's it's a punt, I'm gonna go flip to another game, or I like watching Red Zone and they don't show me punts. Makes me really happy. Right. I don't watch special teams, mostly because there's never an O-lineman on it.
What, you played some special teams? You were
Yeah.
out there.
Well, I was back before they took the wedge away. Right before I was when they had the wedge and they had a wedge buster. Yeah, player safety, my ass. Right. Literally, the job was like, okay, big old lineman, you go link arms with this like D end or linebacker, and we're just seeing see that guy that's the craziest dude on their team. His job's to destroy you, and your job's to double team and destroy him. I hated it. I hated it so much. I remember the first time I ever did it in a preseason game. I felt like that scene from Talladega Nights where Ricky Bobby's driving slow and everyone was driving by him. Like, I remember I turned around and was like, I was like, what? Was that the other cars? Like, those dudes are fast. Like, it's not like practice. So, no, I'm glad that they took that up because the fat kids don't need to be out there for that.
Yeah, no, that's true. And maybe certain parts of the kickoff weren't safe as much as I enjoyed it.
Wedge Buster was the
The
name.
You're right. I mean, when those guys, when you had three guys linking arms running at each other, you're like,
Ah!
this can't be good. No, this is not. All right, so let's play a little game here.
I like games. You like games. We like
You do
games.
like
I
games.
love games.
I'm going to name a football team and you tell me who their quarterback is in the
Ooh.
year 2025.
I'm ready.
Let me start in a very obvious place. Minnesota Vikings.
JJ McCarthy, my favorite guy. I was so in on this guy coming out of the draft. I thought he was going to be the man. Like, no, I'm kidding. Anyways, I think it is JJ season. It makes a lot of sense to me why they did not tag Darnold. I think that you could have got some draft picks at him, but you really hamper yourself in free agency because the second you put that tag on, that 40 million is gone. It's gone. You cannot use it in free agency. I understand the point that they did that there, and I do think, I appreciate that KOC and Kwesi had a plan going into last year's draft. We let Kirk walk. We draft the young kid. We build around a rookie scale contract. They did not let what happened with Sam Darnold this year move them off their spot. And I can respect that, right? I think you and I said the line was NFC Championship, then you really have to have a conversation. Didn't happen. Didn't allow them to move off their spot. And I have a lot of respect for them not blowing up a long term 4 or 5 year plan for one guy. So I do think it's JJ McCarthy.
I still would say that. And I came out of the combine. It's just interesting because, there's literally 50,000 people there in Indy.
It's
And so
amazing.
when it's like, I was talking to somebody, and you're like, could be anybody. And so, like, I I see, Rich Eisen's like, yeah, they're working on a long-term deal with Darnold, and there's been some other insiders who said that. And I was hearing like, well, they're trying to talk to other teams about this tag and trade, and they're hoping that someone does it. Clearly, they were not willing to. And also the amount that I heard, hey, McCarthy's going to be ready, and it just nothing sounded to me like they would want to bring back Darnold. Then all the insiders are saying the opposite. So I'm like, wait, was I in high velocity when everyone else was in prime 47? Be like, oh yeah, we all know Darnold's coming back. I'm like, what the was I in steak and shake
Yeah.
with our friend Chris Thomason?
Low Millers. Low key. You missed it in Low Millers, Low Millers, whatever it is, that little Irish pub.
There's so many good places around there. But I still lean toward they will go to JJ McCarthy
Mhm.
because I think that someone's going to give Sam Darnold the better offer. Now, here's the question is who, and the way we find out is by asking you about teams and you telling me who's their quarterback. Let's start with the Raiders. Who do you think the Raiders are going to have as their quarterback?
I think the Raiders are gonna draft Cam Ward. I think I
Oh,
think I think the Raiders find a way to draft Cam Ward, work their way up, whatever because they pick at, I'm not ready for this yet. 7, right? They pick at 7.
I think so.
I think they find a way to work their way up and draft Cam Ward. I think he's clearly QB1 in this class. I think he has the most talent and ready to play. And I think Pete Carroll, has a history of doing really good with rookie quarterbacks. Obviously, going back to Russell Wilson, obviously didn't work great with Drew Lock. But I do think that Cam Ward is the Las Vegas Raiders quarterback.
Okay, I can buy that. I think the Giants and Raiders are bidding war
Mm-hmm.
for him, and that makes sense. Now, how about the Tennessee Titans?
Hmm.
I kind of like this for Sam Darnold.
I like this for Sam Darnold. I have another team that I like for Sam Darnold more, so
Okay.
I'm not willing to put the flag on him yet.
Okay.
I think that if they're not in love with any of these prospects, I think they just stay with Will Levis one more year. It's maybe not a great idea, but I think that they can see that they're not a quarterback away from being a contender in that division. They have a lot of needs. I'm taking Abdul Carter if he's there. I'm taking another key piece that's going to help around the positions other around and kick it for one more year. I think they probably stick with Will Levis one more year.
The weird thing about Will Levis last year was he had some of the funniest mistakes that I've ever seen in my entire life.
He was a walking meme, dude.
When he played against the Vikings, though, and I always am going to weigh that heavier because it's what I put the most focus onto. And it's actually been pretty good against Zimmer's good defenses or against Flores. If somebody thrives against them, okay, I'm impressed. I didn't think he thrived, but I also didn't think it was that bad. And I thought their team was really bad and possibly their coach. Not really sure about that either. But is it worth trying for one more year to see if he develops versus giving Sam Darnold a 4-year contract for 150 million, or going out and getting a number of the other, I mean, the Kirk Cousins, does Aaron Rodgers like Nashville? Like those don't sound like good ideas. Darnold does to me in Tennessee, because then they can just build the roster and they've got a baseline of quarterback play that can save somebody's job for a while. But all the other options that are potentially out there just don't feel very good for the Tennessee Titans.
Is Justin Fields a free agent?
He is,
I
yes.
think he would be a good spot for Tennessee too.
Okay.
Bring a guy in that's an athletic profile. He looked okay. I mean, he's never going to be the guy, but I think he's an upgrade from Will Levis, right? And you don't have to pay enormous money for him, right? And if you're looking for kind of a stopgap, you could pay him a Sam Darnold type deal, 1 year 10, 1 year 8, somewhere in there. I think Justin Fields would be a good spot for Tennessee as well.
Okay. Let me go to the next team. Who is the next team? This team keeps coming up, so I'll throw you a little curveball here. The Indianapolis Colts.
Oh, it's Anthony
Because
Richardson.
you think they're just going to stick with him?
I think you got to give him one more year. I
Okay.
think you give him one more year, and if it doesn't work next year, you cut bait and run. But you got to give the guy one more year, because in reality, last year was his rookie season, right?
Yeah.
And that for me is why I think you give him. I mean, he played 4 games as a rookie, broke his shoulder, came in this year, I think a little bit too confident, a little too, I'm going to be fine. It's not a big deal. Got his eyes open a little bit, played better down the stretch at the end of the year after he got benched for Flacco. So I do think they give him one more year to really prove it. And then next year they'll move on or not.
And how about the New York Giants?
As much as I hate to say it, it's going to be either Shadur Sanders or Aaron Rodgers. I, 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 I don't know where else they go unless they're in love with a guy like Jackson Dart, right? Or else they're in love and just say, because they don't have a quarterback under roster right now, I believe. I honestly don't think they have one signed to their 90-man roster right now. So they might be a guy that bring in Aaron Rodgers, sign Shadur Sanders, or draft Shadur Sanders, or even, draft a quarterback like the kid out of Louisville late in the 5th. I think he's a decent prospect, but there's not a lot out. I think they really tried to go after Matthew Stafford. And when that didn't work out, now they're kind of just scrambling, looking around like, I don't know what we do. The only question I don't have with that is Brian Dable doesn't like quarterbacks that can't move. He is a look at his track record. He likes, obviously he had Tom when he was in New England, but then you go to Josh Allen, right? You get Daniel Jones. Last year, Tommy DeVito can't move. Drew Lock really can't move. They really struggled in that system. I do think it's going to be a combination of some type of bigger quarterback that can run, which may be a Jackson Dart. I mean, in that realm too, but I really don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. I have no idea.
Marcus Mariota and Tyrod Taylor. I don't know. Someone, it feels like, will sell their soul for Aaron Rodgers, and they make the most sense because they are the most desperate. They also could be a Sam Darnold team if he would be willing to go back and play in that football stadium.
I don't think he can, dude. I really don't. I just don't think he can let himself walk back into MetLife. I don't think the fans would love it either, right? I mean, you talk about if you sign Sam Darnold in that fan base, are they going to be excited? Are they going to be electrified? Is their owner going to be like butts in the seat, baby, Sam Darnold? I don't think so.
I just don't know who else does any of that and also wins you football games. I actually do think that Sam Darnold, Brian Dable, Malik Neighbors, and Andrew Thomas actually sounds pretty good to me. That sounds like a team that could actually compete a little bit. I don't think they'd be great, but I think they could win 8.
Yeah, and I mean, Joe Sheen and Brian Dable might say, "Screw it, we just need to win right now. Let's sign him, give him a big deal, and if it doesn't work, then someone else will pay for my sins." Right? I mean, that's kind of where they might be mentality wise as well.
Okay, I'm running out of teams here. I've only got a couple left. The Jets are clearly not a Sam Darnold team, and I have no idea who's playing quarterback for them.
Tyrod,
Real quick, I really think it might be.
I think it might be too.
Just a little side note, though. The Shadur Sanders thing, what is frustrating to me is that it feels like a lot of people really run to defend someone who very blatantly has some concerns. I mean, I only see the podium, but I think the podium is a reflection of what someone is talking about behind the scenes oftentimes. And his podium was just bizarre. I mean, he was asked about Pat Shurmur, and his answer was, I turn around programs. And you're like, okay, I don't really like, he seems to have an inflated view of himself where he has to be a pocket quarterback who plays with extreme precision and accuracy and leadership and maturity. And he's got to be, if your athleticism is crap, which I think his is for this position, I think that you have to have all the other sliders turned way up. Like, even think about what a great athlete CJ Stroud is at this position. He's like, oh yeah, he's like a mid athlete in this league, but his accuracy, his maturity, his toughness, his leadership, and that guy has still had tough times in the NFL so far. If and I don't think Shedeur is anywhere near CJ Stroud in a lot of those areas. And then you come out and like, okay, kind of prove it to me. And he's like, I'm Deion's kid. And you're like, that's not doing it, pal. And then I see, well, you can't criticize him. He's just confident. I'm like, I don't know, man. I've seen a lot of quarterbacks do those things, and I've covered a lot of quarterbacks. Nobody talks like this in the league.
And I think Daniel Jeremiah, I was listening to something he said where he goes, he played at CU like Caleb Williams played at USC with the run around create, but he's nowhere near the athlete that Caleb is. Right. And Caleb this year tried to do some of that stuff, being an elite athlete, and got murdered. Right. Murdered. I see Shedeur in the same light of he can play in rhythm, and when he does play in rhythm, it's good, but it's not consistently in rhythm. And at the quarterback position, you need to be able to walk in as a rookie and gain the respect of your teammates. It's not given to you. I don't care if you're a first round pick. I don't care what you are. You have to earn the respect of your teammates. I don't know if he's ever had to do that before, right? Because he has been Deion's kid, and he went to Jackson State or wherever it was down there, and then he goes to CU with his dad, and he's the guy immediately. He's going to have a bit of a wake up call, and I think Deion will have him prepped and ready to go. But he's going to have to walk in that room and earn everything that was given to him. None of this, no one cares you're Deion's kid. No one, in fact, it's going to hurt you because I would be like, oh, all right, Deion's kid, show me something. I don't know. I don't know. I think if he was in last year's class, he's QB6, right? And now you're talking about him being QB2. I think he probably falls into the mid first, or someone's going to fall in love with him and the owner is going to pound the table and go butts in the seat, and you're going to have to overdraft him.
Right. That's the X factor that we can never figure out. In a rational world, though, I don't think that quarterbacks these days get really drafted in the second round so much. Just looking at recent picks, it's either someone is all in or kind of all out, like Malik Willis.
First, fifth, right? Like it's like that's really where the quarterback market in the draft is nowadays.
That was the Spencer Rattler thing last year. It's like, well, I'd rather have Spencer Rattler in the third. And like, no, he's not going in the third. It just doesn't happen that often. Third is probably the baseline for like guys we don't love. But you're right. Sometimes the owner walks in the room, pounds the table, and says, we better draft a quarterback. And you're just going to have to deal with it. I just was, because I enjoyed the heck out of Colorado football games. They were entertaining. Hey, the Nebraska game, that was fun for you. But But they were a fun football team, and I love watching Travis Hunter. So it's like, okay, really, this is really cool. And I liked him as a player, but I wanted to hear something totally different from him at the combine than what we heard. So I wasn't surprised when McShay and other people, and then, the whole thing, like, this is what they always say about black quarterbacks. Like, no. I saw, and look, there's a long history of garbage like that, but look at Michael Penix last year. Look at the way he handled himself. He blew people away. They walked out of those meetings going, oh man, that guy's special. That's why I heard the word special. And so it's like, we need to be able to judge these on an equal plane of he looked like a clown to me at the podium with the way he talked, because no quarterbacks talk like this. So we also need to be able to evaluate it fairly. Anyway, let us just move on to, what do I got left? Cleveland? Is Cleveland your team? Pittsburgh? Cleveland and Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I think Pittsburgh is my ideal landing spot for Sam Darnold, because it is, I know the grades weren't great, but I mean, you talk about a steady Eddie head coach, a steady Eddie system to bring you in with people around you. I think Pittsburgh, and they put a ton of capital into their offensive line last year.
Yeah.
Right. They dropped Troy Fontenot out of Washington. He got dinged this year, but he's going to be a guy. Zach Frazier was an incredible starter at center for them out of West Virginia. Mason McCormick, a 4th-round pick. They put some serious value into protecting their guys up front. It is a run-first type of team, so you're not going to come in and put everything on Sam, but I think he unlocks that team to go and make the next level. I mean, they're still winning 8, 9, 10, 11 games every single year with an unreal defense. I think Sam is a piece that they'll go, if I'm the Steelers, I'm making a big push for Sam Darnold. Cleveland's the other team that I had pegged for him to go to. You never know what that's going to go on there. But again, lots of talent. Kevin Stefanski's a great coach, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So I just don't know if Sam's willing to go, do I want to be the next long list of quarterbacks in Cleveland where everyone's talking about, oh, it's not good, it's this, it's that? Or do I want to go to the Steelers that are well respected, well run, head coach is top notch, Hall of Fame? I think the Steelers are where I say Sam Darnold starts next year.
All the other teams I named to you are franchises that if we were going 1 through 32, just what do you think of the franchise? Not the quarterback, not the roster. Just what do you think of the franchise? There are a lot of them in the bottom 5 to
Yeah.
7,
Yeah.
and Pittsburgh would be one that's in the top 12. And somebody said to me at one point, somebody in the league
Mm.
said to me, yeah, we feel like we're competing with maybe 12 other teams every year because there's just so few teams that are run really well. It's probably not 12, it's probably more like 18.
Mm-hmm.
But the half of this league has no idea what they're doing. And if you're Sam Darnold and you're his agent, you got to be like, we need to make sure that we're not going to a place that's just going to be a clown show. And Cleveland is a clown show and has been a clown show. There's no chance I'm taking that phone call. Pittsburgh, you can compete in that division. You've done it for a long time. And I think also Mike Tomlin has got to be tired of, and I follow some people in their local media. They're getting antsy the same way Vikings fans want this quarterback because they've had done with the same thing for so long. It's like 1 or 2 years you get to the playoffs without a good quarterback. Hey, great job, coach. 7 years. All right. Can you get a quarterback, please? I think that is indeed the best location for Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, and I think that they'll get some weapons on the outside, right? Can George Pickens keep it all together inside the lines, right? Obviously, it didn't work out with Smith, I think is who it was, or they brought him over and then he like quit. No, that was Baltimore. Never mind. I'm mixing my names here. But Fryermuth's really
It's also
good.
not Smith either, but we'll just move on.
You know who I'm talking about. See, you knew who I was though. That's that sync that we have. But I think if I'm Sam Darnold, I agree with everything you said. I've been through the ringer as a player. I've been through ups and downs and everything. I want to go somewhere that is stable, right? I also don't want to go somewhere that's going to be a 1 year turnaround with a head coach, right? Hey, if I go to New York and I go with Dable, I love Dave's, I love Joe Sheen, but they're playing for their job this year. If things don't go well, you're 2 or 3 injuries away from things not going well, and then a whole new regime's coming in and everything's starting over. I don't want that if I'm Sam Darnold. I want consistency. I want proven track record, and I want someone that's going to sign me to a 2 or 3 year deal, and I'm going to play that deal out with that head coach.
Tuesday morning left guard free agency special. This was good. I enjoyed this.
Oh yeah.
Let's do it again after they sign some players. How about
Yes.
that?
Yeah. Post free agency is always way more fun when the dust settles.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks for your time as always. Great stuff. You shook the rust off and went right back to it, and I appreciate that. And we will definitely talk very soon, my friend.
Absolutely. Football.
Football.